It's really cold! It's times like this, in the cold Australian winter, where it's not snow outside, but constant fucking rain, I need to find something to warm my heart. Ah, good old Arnie. If you weren't a kid in the 80s through 90s, it's hard to understand just how godlike and awe-inspiring someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger was. He'd be in stuff like Terminator 2, Commando, Predator, Total Recall, Kindergarten Cop, Batman and Robin, Last Action Hero, all of these movies that were huge for people like me growing up. But one that is often fairly derided is one that I actually rank among his best works. A movie that sadly many mistook for a movie about buying a toy for your son in order to buy his love. That movie is Jingle All the Way, a movie I'm confident in stating is an underrated gem. The movie has Arnold Schwarzenegger starring as Howard Langston. Yes, this is a Howard. A hard-working husband and father who lets down his son, played by young Anakin Skywalker himself, Jake Lloyd, and promises to get him a doll of Turbo Man, a popular kids' toy that causes a pandemonium as people try to get their hands on one before Christmas. Arnie forgets to get the doll until it's almost too late, leading to hilarity ensuing as he competes with Myron, a postman played by Sinbad, going all over the city on Christmas Eve in a mad rush to get the Turbo Man doll for his son. Despite the silliness of everything I just described, the movie's structure is actually really solid, with a clear three-act structure, consistent character motivations, and personal growth for Howard Langston, the character Arnold Schwarzenegger plays but who I'll probably keep calling Arnie anyway. The movie has very clear acts. The first act establishes very quickly that Howard keeps prioritizing his work over his family, to the point of making phone calls during an office Christmas party, and missing his son's karate demonstration despite promising to be there. Despite this, he does care about his family, and is clearly upset in how he has let them down and disappointed them. Howard's attempts to make things up with his son is what leads up to the plot of the movie, his hunt for a Turbo Man doll in order to please him. Of course, he forgets to actually buy the doll until he's reminded on Christmas Eve, when they're almost impossible to find. I love Arnie's horrified reactions to things in this movie, they are perfection. This reaction is also the end of the first act, and sets up the conflict for the rest of the movie. Arnie doesn't have the doll, and now has just Christmas Eve to find one. The second act begins the following morning, on Christmas Eve. Howard sets off to find a Turbo Man doll and meet his family at a big parade held in the city every year. The movie has many characters who get in Howard's way, including a cop he keeps bumping into and an evil Santa ring, but the two most important are his evil sitcom neighbor, Ted, played by Phil Hartman, who voiced Troy McClure and Lionel Hutz in The Simpsons, and Myron, who also desperately seeks a Turbo Man doll for his son. He and Myron compete over the doll all across the city. All of this madness ends up leading to Arnie's car being stripped by thieves, and he gives up and goes home. Seeing Ted with his wife in his home, he decides to get payback by stealing a Turbo Man Ted bought for his son, Johnny, but realizes he's hit rock bottom when he reflects on the fact that he's stealing a gift from a father to his son. He tries returning it, only to accidentally start a fire and breaks a window, and is caught by Ted and his wife. Liz and Jamie leave for the parade with Ted and his son, and Howard is left at home to wallow in his misery / defend himself from the reindeer Ted got his son for Christmas. And yes, Arnie punches out a reindeer. I'm going to keep reminding people that there is a movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger punches out a reindeer. Anyway, it is here, at the second act low point, where Howard realizes that he needs to do what he should have been doing the whole time, which is keeping his promises. He may not be able to get the Turbo Man doll, but he can still be with his family at the parade. The third act mostly takes place at the Christmas parade. Arnie arrives, but the cop from earlier winds up chasing him, and he winds up hiding in a back room where he is mistaken for a suit performer and shoved into a Turbo Man costume.
The primary controls are going to be right here.
When he is told to present a Turbo Man doll to a child in the audience, he realizes that this is his chance to finally get a Turbo Man doll for his son, only for Myron to show up in costume as Turbo Man's archenemy Dementor, also wanting the doll. The two have a superhero battle in the streets, to the point of their costumes having functioning gadgets, and Arnie takes to the skies in a jetpack. See, does Arnie fly in the skies in a jetpack in Predator? I don't think so. Arnie defeats Myron, saves Jamie from a fall, and gives the doll to his son, only for him to say he doesn't need it, since he has the real Turbo Man at home. We then get another horrified Arnie reaction when he realizes he forgot to get a present for his wife. It's amazing. Of course, any discussion about Jingle All the Way starts with having to address the big Austrian elephant in the room, which is the casting of Arnold Schwarzenegger, a man known for iconic, larger-than-life action heroes in a Christmas family comedy. It certainly raised a lot of eyebrows for this actor to play someone who is basically a sitcom dad. You might be thinking that he's playing an undercover mattress salesman, like how he's undercover as a computer salesman in True Lies, and he has to do some kind of Christmas caper, fighting bad guys, trying to do something horrible right before Christmas Day. Except no, his character really is a mattress salesman. Arnold Schwarzenegger has played so many badasses, yet it's weird that he's never actually played a serving member of the armed forces other than a deleted scene in Terminator 3. He's an ex-commando in Commando, a mercenary and former soldier in Predator, and a cop in a few movies like Raw Deal and Red Heat.
Cocainum.
Yet he's only been a mother once. The movie was written with someone like Tim Allen in mind, who did a lot of wacky movies where he plays a dad, or dad-like figure, and has to get out of whatever wacky situation he's found himself in. Hell, he was literally a sitcom dad in Home Improvement for years. However, Arnold Schwarzenegger suddenly had time in his schedule after a planned Planet of the Apes remake fell through, and liking the subject matter, agreed to star in the movie. Despite the fact that the movie wasn't written with Arnold Schwarzenegger in mind, he had done comedies before. In those movies, as well as some of his action movies, he does have a good sense of comedic timing and delivery. He's actually pretty underrated as a comedic performer, honestly. Arnold Schwarzenegger's charm, energy, and effort makes his movies worth watching.
Oh, poor baby. Da ist der ganze Branze wechseln kann mit Cubidaner Blitzen. I'm having a good time. Bye. On your way out, just tell her we'll be a few minutes late.
Oh, she won't worry. I mean, I'm here and... Oh, these cookies!
Put that cookie down! Now!
Compared to something like Hulk Hogan in Santa with Muscles, where Hulk Hogan simply isn't charming or likable and neither is his character, it's night and day. The script didn't have Arnold Schwarzenegger in mind when it was written, meaning that the movie hardly acknowledges his physique. This is helped by the fact that it's set in winter, so he's wearing lots of clothes, and it hides his muscles. It's only really in the fight scene with the underground Santa ring, and yes, this movie has one of those, and this amazing put-down he receives from Ted, his sitcom arch-nemesis, that really acknowledges his physique in any way.
You can't bench press your way out of this one.
There's a scene where Howard's wife Liz reacts to him wearing the Turbo Man suit as if she's surprised at how sexy he looks with muscles, when he already has muscles. The Turbo Man suit is also apparently so convincing that not even his wife and son recognize him, which creates one of the funnier moments. The suit does have a built-in microphone that alters his voice.
Jamie!
But come on, the audience doesn't buy it for a second. This idea of not recognizing Howard as Turbo Man would have been somewhat believable with a normal-sized mortal actor, but Arnold Schwarzenegger breaks the illusion, which only makes it funnier. You might be wondering, but Tin Man, a comedy where Arnold Schwarzenegger fights a Santa ring, punches a reindeer, and fights a mailman over a toy, couldn't possibly have interesting themes and subtext.
Shut up!
Well, it does. Howard's own personal growth is a key part of the movie. The movie starts with him neglecting his family by breaking promises to them and being dishonest to them. He's sympathetic in that he lies usually because of getting distracted or to try and avoid getting into trouble, but much like in a classic sitcom, little lies quickly snowball into a wacky pile-up. His biggest flaw, failing to deliver on his promises to people, but especially his son, causes him numerous problems throughout the movie.
You can't go to work today. What about the parade? You didn't go last year or the year before. Anyway, this year Turbo Man's gonna be there.
Turbo Man,
Yes.
yes. It's turbo time.
Dad, you can't miss it. It's gonna be really cool.
I'll be there. I promise.
This is most clear when he lies to his wife Liz that he got the doll, which she asked him to do 2 weeks earlier, and then assures her repeatedly that he did get it and even admonishes her for doubting him.
The doll.
I asked you to pick one up 2 weeks ago.
That doll. Of course.
Please tell me that you did not forget that doll.
I got it. I got the Turbo Man doll with that realistic voice box that says, "It's turbo time."
Oh, good.
I mean, you thought for a minute that I would not do something that you tell me?
And then lies that he left the doll at work so he can sneak off to try and find one for sale. Arnie is trying to live the life of, well, a traditional sitcom dad, working really hard to provide a big house and nice things for his family. But what he doesn't realize until near the end of the movie is that he has been neglecting them by failing to keep his promises, lying to them, and putting his job first. Note that Howard decides to return the doll of his own volition. He isn't caught in the act of stealing it and then feeling bad. He is caught after having already decided to return it. The distinction is important as it shows that for all of his flaws, Howard is still a good person. After establishing that Howard has flaws, I didn't say Arnie because Arnie is flawless, the movie shows him making efforts to make amends, not by buying things or by fixing things, but by keeping his promises as a husband and father. Only this movie could have Arnold Schwarzenegger punch a reindeer, befriend it over Grain Belt premium beer, and then get teary-eyed as he thinks about his wife and son. Wait a minute, I just realized this is the second movie where Arnie befriends a deer. A hero is only as good as his villains, and some of the best villains are representations of what the hero could be, an evil counterpart, or something the hero must overcome by becoming greater than their villain. This rule applies to movies like Terminator 2, where Arnold Schwarzenegger fights the T-1000, a Terminator sent back in time to terminate John Connor, much like the Terminator in the first movie. In Predator, he is the best there is on Earth, but faces an alien hunter who targets him precisely due to his skills. To face the Predator in the end, he becomes invisible to it and fights like it does. This continues in Jingle All the Way, where Arnie's two main rivals, Ted and Myron, represent what Howard could be in very different ways. Ted is Howard's next door neighbor and lives in his street and also has a young son. Unlike Howard, he is separated from his wife.
Your dad is so cool. I wish my dad did stuff like this.
He never used to. Not until he and my mom split up.
Really?
Maybe your parents should get a divorce. Did wonders for my dad.
But is there for his son, and humble brags to Howard constantly about being there for his karate demonstration, putting Christmas lights on his roof for him, and helping his wife set up Christmas decorations and bake cookies while Arnie is out looking for a Turbo Man doll all day. Ted saw that Turbo Man was a highly sought-after toy, and got one months earlier, beating the Christmas rush. Much like a classic sitcom neighbor, his excellence and annoyance serves to irritate Howard.
Howard, by the way, they say it may get icy later. You might want to wrap some chains around those tires.
Maybe you should wrap some chains around you.
What?
Also, unlike Howard, Ted is revealed to be a schemer plotting to get into women's pants, including Howard's wife Liz, by acting charming and worming his way into their lives. He is humiliated for this and doesn't get a happy ending.
Well, that didn't exactly go as well as I'd hoped.
Myron is also a father desperate for a Turbo Man doll, but unlike Howard, he is not well off and is distant from his family. He spends all of his time working, even during the Christmas holidays, got cucked by his wife, resents his father, thinks of himself as a loser with no future, and seems to be an alcoholic given that he had whiskey on him while hunting for the Turbo Man doll. He represents what Howard could have become, and what he could become should he become even more distant from his family. This can be seen where Howard briefly imagines Jamie is in Myron's place, which is hilarious because we get to see Darth Vader drinking while underaged, and another amazing horrified Arnie expression. Speaking of the Turbo Man doll, it is important that Jamie doesn't ask for it right away. He sulks in his room, and Howard, in desperation, offers to buy him anything he wants to make up for missing the karate demonstration. He views Jamie's sadness as a problem that can be fixed if specific things are done, rather than something caused by his own behavior and can only really be fixed by him changing his ways. It is here when Jamie asks for the Turbo Man doll. People talk about this movie as if the only thing the son wants is the toy, but he only asks for the toy after Arnie promises to get him anything he wants in order to make up for missing yet another karate demonstration. Tensions flare up between Howard and Jamie over the phone. Jamie shares a moral lesson, presumably one of many that he learned from Turbo Man, and this leads to Howard and Jamie exchanging heated words, and Jamie yells at him about how he never fulfills his promises.
Listen, Dad, are you on your way? The parade's gonna start soon.
Get your mother, please.
Well, are you?
Yes, immediately. Now please get your mother.
Before you left, you promised that you're gonna be at the parade.
Jamie.
Dad, when someone makes a promise, they definitely should keep it. It's like what Turbo Man says. Always keep your promises if you want to keep your friends.
Enough of this Turbo Man, okay? I had it up to here with this Turbo Man. If there's anyone I don't want to have advice from right now, it's Turbo Man. Now, get your mother. I'm sorry, Jamie. Look,
What would you know about keeping your promises? You never keep your promises. You never do anything you say you're gonna do, ever!
So when Jamie gets upset at Howard over the phone, it isn't because he isn't getting the doll he wanted, or that he isn't going to the parade. He never even finds out that he doesn't have the doll, or that he tried stealing one from Ted. He is upset that his father, someone he loves and looks up to as a potential role model, has once again broken a promise he made, and feels like he's being lied to. Speaking of the toy, Turbo Man is far more than just a toy. He's an idea. Well, actually, he's an aspirational hero, someone that is very popular with children and who they view as a role model.
Hey, Turbo Man's gonna be there. You can always count on him.
Heroes are something very important to children, and become inspirations for them even well into adulthood. This, of course, is why toy companies make toys about heroes, since it makes kids want to spend their parents' money on their products. Turbo Man and superhero stuff is all over Jamie's room. He wears Turbo Man pajamas while eating Turbo Man cereal, and he has a drawing of Turbo Man he made in his clubhouse under a picture of his family.
I remember a few years ago, I wanted to do something really special for Jamie. I built him his own clubhouse.
Man, I love it when movies actually bother setting things up that happen later. Nowadays movies feel like they can't be bothered anymore, and you get accused of nitpicking for pointing it out. Another great detail is that the picture Jamie drew is based on their holiday photo, and you get to see it before he coloured it in 2 weeks earlier. That's a really nice touch. Wait, what? The picture in the clubhouse completely changes for the close-up. Boo! Speaking of the clubhouse, the scene where Arnie mentions the clubhouse is during the lull in his chase with the Turbo Man doll, where he and Myron briefly put their differences aside and bond. The scene shows how different Howard and Myron are, despite the similarities. Howard recalls a story of building a clubhouse for Jamie, and even though it wasn't put together right, he still loved it. Howard thinks of this time fondly.
I was the hero then.
On the other hand, Myron recalls the Johnny 7 Ome gun, a real toy from the 1960s, a toy that Myron desperately wanted, even recalling the commercial in full detail, much like Jamie recalls the commercial for the Turbo Man doll. However, Myron is bitter, as his father never got him the toy, and he blames the way his life has turned out partially on missing out on one. The movie ends with Arnie, through a series of wacky accidents, winding up dressed up as Turbo Man and having a superhero battle, culminating in him saving Jamie from a fall. It leads to this really touching but also really funny bit, where Jamie feels bad for his dad not being there, blaming himself since he'd yelled at him over the phone, and Arnie tells him it's okay, since he is his dad, and Jamie says this really shocked, "Dad?" Which is so funny since it's so obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger in the costume. But Arnie gives Jamie the doll, finally achieving what he had set out to do, only for Jamie to give it to Myron so he can give it to his son. Never mind that in all likelihood he's going to prison for assault and attempted robbery. Jamie is happy to give the Turbo Man doll away, saying that he has the real Turbo Man back home. This has more meaning than it may appear to have. Jamie isn't saying it just because his dad is dressed up as Turbo Man, but because he has become like Turbo Man literally and metaphorically. In a literal sense, the Turbo Man episode at the start of the movie has the kid falling, but is then saved by Turbo Man. This is mirrored in the end of the movie, where Jamie is rescued by Arnie. In a metaphorical sense, Jamie is happy that his father was there for him and keeping his promises, just like the role model Turbo Man is. Despite ultimately being a movie about keeping promises, Jingle All the Way's premise, and what it is remembered for, is the absurd lengths some parents go to in order to get toys for their children. Jingle All the Way is also notable as it is one of the few big-budget movies to satirize the commercialization of Christmas, a holiday that celebrates the birth of Jesus Christ, and a time to spend time with family and loved ones has been transformed by people with something to sell into a holiday for spending big on gifts. This commercialization has led to many people, including Howard, to forget what the truly important part of Christmas is. The Christmas rush for toys, while a recent phenomenon, already had many examples by the film's release. Jingle All the Way was partially inspired by the real-life frenzy some people went through trying to buy Cabbage Patch Kids, Buzz Lightyear, and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers toys. The film's release would coincide with Tickle Me Elmo, which was also a monster hit and caused actual fights to break out and even a poor Walmart employee getting trampled.
One of the clerks was sent to hospital after being trampled in the frenzy.
Somebody in the crowd yelled, "There's the Elmos," and they rushed us.
He got two! He got two! Get the mailman! Get him! He's lying!
The premise of people going to ridiculous lengths to get their hands on a Turbo Man doll isn't that far removed from reality. The movie makes fun of people who think that toys and presents are more important than they actually are. Despite certain characters' claims, such as Myron never forgiving his father for not getting him an Ome gun, or Jamie saying that the other kids will think he's a loser if he misses out, none of that is really important. Or true. A key aspect of the commercialization of Christmas is the expectation placed on people to make big purchases and to one-up others. This can be seen in Ted, who in part of his efforts to annoy Arnie and show off how giving and amazing he is, has way more Christmas lights than his neighbors' houses do, and buys extravagant gifts like an actual living reindeer for his son. A large percentage of Christmas and holiday purchasing is spent on children, who typically don't have spending money of their own, and therefore get most of their favourite presents at Christmas or their birthdays. Instead of saving money for them, they get toys and games and other good stuff bought for them by their parents. Jamie is also clearly reciting the toy commercial, listing every selling point, and even the batteries and accessories not included line.
What do you want?
I want the Turbo Man action figure with the arms and legs that move, and the boomerang suitor, the rock and roll jetpack, and the realistic voice activator that says 5 different phrases. Accessories sold separately, batteries not included.
Well, I'm glad you had to stop and think about it.
Johnny's gonna get one, and so is everybody else I know. Whoever doesn't can be a real loser.
As Myron says, the commercials suck their children's minds out. Despite this, it is ultimately a child that realizes the true importance of Christmas. Jamie is the one who gives up the Turbo Man doll, knowing that someone else wants it more than he does. Jamie is of course happy to give it up, since he gets to cuddle with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because he has the real Turbo Man at home. But it is also a display of selflessness and charity. This is the real heart of the movie, and the hunting of the Turbo Man doll is simply the satire-laden journey taken to get to that point. Of course, this message wasn't understood by everyone who heard it. That's the problem with satire. You make it too subtle and people don't get it. You make it too obvious and people say you should be more subtle. Contemporary reviews of the movie were pretty rough, with a lot of low or average ratings. Empire gave it 1 star, Roger Ebert 2.5, Rotten Tomatoes 20%. This BBC review from 2000 is pretty scathing, which pretty much the only thing the reviewer likes is Phil Hartman. This review is pretty bad, honestly. It whiffs a lot of key points. It calls Jamie a brat when he isn't really. He gets upset about promises being broken. He says that Arnold Schwarzenegger has the comic timing of a dead moose. Okay, he should have said dead reindeer, like it's a Christmas video. But he also cites Twins, Kindergarten Cop, and Junior as examples of his lack of comedic ability, which is flat out wrong. Those are all funny, even if Junior is really batshit weird at times. He disses Sinbad's comic ability as well, like what? The argument seems flawed. He says the script sees Christmas as it really is, a time for rampant commercialism, yet also says it's difficult to warm to a deliberately mean-spirited enterprise. So is it a bad thing or a good thing that the movie is calling out the commercialization of Christmas? Also, the movie isn't really that mean-spirited. The violence is very slapstick and no one seems really genuinely hurt or in lasting pain or suffering. The overall messages of seeing the true importance of Christmas and the bond between father and son are positive ones, not mean-spirited. On Metacritic, the critic score is 34 out of 100, while the audience score is 7.3 out of 10. I don't know why they're rated differently. This shows that the movie is interpreted very differently by different people. I'm not referring to just whether or not people find the movie funny. but whether people understood the movie's message and themes. The satire in the movie was misunderstood, and people took it literally, thinking that the purpose of the movie was to convey a story about getting your child a toy, playing into the idea of the commercialization of Christmas. The same problem happened to Last Action Hero, a movie which satirizes dumb action movies, but was mistaken as a dumb action movie that was being done by accident when it was in fact done on purpose.
You know, tar actually sticks to some people.
That said, Arnold Schwarzenegger's miscasting makes the movie bizarre and easy to make fun of, and Sinbad as Myron the Mailman is essentially a character doing stand-up at times. Phil Hartman is great as Ted, but comes off as a slimy, creepy Ned Flanders instead of a real person.
Ted, I need to speak to my wife. So could you get her on the phone, please?
I think she's in the shower, Howard. Do you want me to go check?
No!
People mistook the movie's message to be, buy a toy for your kid or you don't really love them. People think that Arnie is playing some poor, hardworking dad trying to provide for his ungrateful family, but that's not the case. Arnie is his own boss and chooses to work late nights while his other employees are having a Christmas party. This is his introductory scene, and it establishes who he is perfectly. A workaholic who gets distracted easily to the point of forgetting his promises and obligations. Also to the point of calling his wife his #1 customer.
But only for you, Mr. Jacobs, because you're our #1 customer. Andrea, hi. Well, if you think the fabric is too dark, then we just recover it. Well, what do you expect? You're my #1 customer. Liz, hi, honey. How are you? I know, Jamie's karate class. I'll meet you there, I promise. No, don't forget, you're my #1 customer. Liz! Look, I didn't mean that.
The movie is about a father learning to keep his promises to his son, but people were shallow and mistook the movie as one about a father trying to get a doll for his son. That is what is going on, but there's more to it than just that. The ending, where Jamie gives up the doll to Myron's son, and Jamie has the real Turbo Man at home, is the climax of this. Jamie wanted Howard to fulfill his promises, and the doll and going to the parade were simply things that he was promised. People saw the giving up the doll as a last-minute decision of a script that couldn't decide if it was pro-toy or pro-family, and didn't understand that the true heart of the movie is about a father and son relationship, not a father trying to buy a toy. A criticism of the movie is that the movie's superhero battle and Howard being the real Turbo Man are very sudden, and come out of nowhere in order to resolve the movie. And yeah, I get it. People fighting over an in-demand toy on Christmas Eve is much easier to believe than a jetpack, but do note that all of this escalation of the stakes, slapstick cartoon violence, and property damage happens after his initial searches for the Turbo Man doll at multiple different toy stores.
Yeah, I got a madman in my studio and
But the movie starts off very grounded and real, but slowly becomes zanier and zanier, to the point of becoming a live-action cartoon almost. It's gradual, it isn't very sudden. Much of what happens is something you would see in a sitcom. Take away Arnie and the superhero battle, the movie would be a lot less memorable and would be seen as a cookie-cutter Christmas movie. While the themes are surprisingly complicated, the direction, action, music, and plot is very workmanlike. There's even daylight throughout the whole movie, there isn't really fancy lighting or anything. It lacks the ambition of other movies, presumably due to how quickly it was filmed. Compare it to True Lies, where even scenes of characters talking in a house are more interesting visually. It doesn't help that True Lies was directed by James Cameron, while Jingle All the Way's director, Brian Levant, as competent as he is, almost exclusively works on sitcoms and kids' movies. The speed of the film's production was also a factor in the lack of promotional material, advertising, and merchandising. Arnold Schwarzenegger signed in on February 1996, and the film was released the following November, leaving very little time for filming or for merchandising, with only a small number of toys ever hitting the shelves. People thought the movie was meant to advertise real Turbo Man dolls, when the real-life merchandise was far lower in scale than other movies. This belief that the movie about toys was in fact an elaborate toy commercial was actually believed by some critics at the time. Like I said before, the point isn't that Jamie is happy that his dad got him the doll, it's that he's fulfilling his promises to him. Arnie hasn't become Turbo Man just because he put on a costume and fought off a supervillain, but because he's become a positive role model like Turbo Man is. Howard, like Turbo Man, keeps his promises to those close to him. The fact that people mistook this movie as pro-consumerist getting the toy almost proves the movie's point. That the commercialization of Christmas has made people lose focus on what Christmas, or indeed the entire holiday period, should be, which is to spend time with loved ones. The effects are... Some of the jetpack CGI hasn't aged well, but the way the smoke billows behind him on the ground, the practical reindeer that Arnie fights, it's pretty refreshing to see mostly real locations and sets, after modern movies have an overabundance of green screen and CGI. At least the Star Wars prequels used CGI and green screen to create amazing planets, locations, and alien creatures. Justice League CGI'd out a mustache, and it just looks weird. I like that there's plenty of setup and payoffs throughout the movie. The DJ I heard on the radio later on hosts a call-in competition which their feud spills into. The karate stuff is important. Turbo Man might even be the reason Jamie wants to learn karate. He even uses a karate kick on Myron later. The entire ending is a reflection of the Turbo Man TV show scene in the opening, which ties into the theme of Howard becoming Turbo Man. This, Myron saying Turtle Man instead of Turbo Man,
Turbo Man.
And the clubhouse and parade set up ahead of time means that this movie has better setup and payoff than the Star Wars sequels. The movie understands how popular shows and toys at the time were marketed and highly desirable. A funny way this is shown is the character Booster. Brewster is Turbo Man's sidekick, his faithful pet tiger, and from little we see of him, seems to be a weirdo and a klutz who makes Turbo Man look cooler. In the case of Booster, no one likes him.
We have plenty of Turbo Man's faithful pet tiger Booster in stock. And by the way,
when Jamie is playing with Ted's son, neither of them want to be Booster. Turbo Man dolls are out of stock everywhere, but there's still plenty of Booster dolls. This comes to a head when Myron, in costume as Dementor, punches the politically incorrect Booster suit performer off a float.
Where the hell have you been? Jeez, I've been sweating like a dog in a Chinese restaurant waiting for your sorry ass to show up.
And he's attacked by children who don't like him. There's a few little things I don't really like in the movie, even though I do like it overall. While Arnie, Sinbad, and Phil Hartman get a lot to do, the rest of the cast doesn't really do as much. The movie is just over 90 minutes long, so there's not really enough time to give everyone lots to do. Some of Jamie Lloyd's delivery is fine, but others aren't fine.
I don't care.
Oh, come on, Jamie. I hope this is not true. Look, believe me,
But you always say that, and you never come anyways. Purple's important to me, Dad. That's 1 away from green and 3 away from black. Mom, did you see that? I was flying with Turbo Man. He saved me from Dementor. It was the coolest. Did you see? Did you?
I saw.
It's similar to his performance as Anakin Skywalker. He isn't awful, it's just that some lines are better than others.
Oops, wrong one. Maybe this one. Nope. Wait, here it is. Yes. I guess.
Then we will see each other again.
I will come back and free you, Mom. I promise.
The scene where Arnie is by himself and steals the Turbo Man doll is let down by having Howard actually say things out loud when he is by himself.
what am I doing? Look at me. Stealing from a kid? I can do this. You're gonna go back. Nice doggy.
The movie has clearly done this to convey what is going on, even though you don't need dialogue, just good editing and framing.
You're gonna go back. Nice doggy.
Compare it to Home Alone, which was directed by Jingle All the Way's producer, Chris Columbus, where Kevin is home alone on Christmas and misses his family, despite wishing them away earlier. He walks by a family enjoying each other's company on Christmas, and is clearly longing for his own family. There's no monologue of Kevin saying how he feels. The audience can figure out how he's feeling from the direction and editing. If I cut out the monologuing, you can tell what Arnie is thinking. By the same token, if I show Kevin looking longingly at something else, it completely changes the audience's perception and what he's feeling at that time. This is called the Kuleshov effect, where editing is used to inform the audience's feelings. Jingle All the Way's director, Brian Levant, had this to say about the film. The story that was important to me was between the father and son. It's a story about love, and a father's journey to deliver it in the form of a Turbo Man doll. The fact that I got to design a toy line and do the commercials and make pajamas and comic books was fun for me as a filmmaker, but at its root, the movie's about something really sweet. It's about love, and building a better family. Despite Arnold Schwarzenegger arguably being miscast in the role of Howard Langston, he brings good comedic acting to the movie, as do Sinbad and Phil Hartman. The film has a well-executed structure, plot, and themes, which convey a message of forgetting the crazy Christmas rush for toys and gifts, or trying to outdo the holiday spirit of rivals, but to instead focus on your family and what is really important in life. Despite these positives, the film was misunderstood by critics and contemporary audiences, who saw it as a bland, meaningless movie whose theme was about the importance of getting toys in order to buy your children's affection, only for the movie to find more appreciation as time went by. Jingle All the Way is more than just slapstick violence and a questionable casting choice. It is a movie that actually has something to say about the commercialization of Christmas, and how people can prioritize the wrong things in their lives. The montage of people fighting over the chance to get a Turbo Man doll, with It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year playing over it, shows this most clearly. It is a movie about fulfilling promises to people important to you, not about buying a toy. Jingle All the Way is not just a misunderstood movie, but it is a great Christmas movie, and one I highly recommend watching.